it's Brittany. So, today's gonna be another movie review on a Christmas movie. And today I'll be reviewing The Santa Claus 2. And it was directed by Michael Michael Lambert, and it was released in theaters November 1st, 2002. And of course, Tim Allen reprises his role as Santa Claus, Scott Calvin, and this time he is on a quest um, to find Mrs. Claus, to find a wife, and he has very little time to find a wife, because if he doesn't get married by the next Christmas Eve, he will no longer be Santa Claus at all. And on top of that, his son Charlie gets in trouble because he vandalized the school, so he has to sort things out with his son, along with to find a wife before Christmas Eve, until he's no longer Santa Claus anymore. So, of course, this is just a very interesting sequel, and of course, Elizabeth Mitchell, she plays Carol, who becomes Mrs. Claus, as we see later on. And I would say this is a good sequel to Santa Claus, only because I remember when I first watched the first one, I thought that was really good on this movie, on how he becomes Santa Claus. So it was just like a whole different take on a Christmas movie. But then in part 2, we see that he enjoys his job of being Santa Claus, and it had been 8 years. But now he's pressed for time to find a wife, and soon, because if he doesn't, there'll be no more Santa Claus. No more. And so as time is going by, as you can see, the beard, Santa Claus beard he has, starts to shrink. So he starts to slowly, somehow his, I don't know how to put it, but the best way to put it is, he himself, who is now the new Santa Claus, he's slowly fading. And so when he does go out of the North Pole to not only find a wife, but to sort things out with his son, it's just very interesting. But even before he leaves the North Pole, he and the head elf, Bernard, and I think, and the other elf, Curtis, they help him to. So they actually came up with this idea. Well, more like Santa Claus came up with this idea of having someone else in charge. Although I think Bernard himself could keep things in order while he was away, but I think he just had this idea of having another Santa Claus around. So instead, he went through this thing where it makes toys. So he went through there, and it makes this a very tall, realistic, well, not very much realistic, but this pretty much tall, plastic-looking toy of Santa Claus, and he pretty much left him in charge. But then the toy Santa, he is in control for now, temporarily, but things get out of hand, because then the toy Santa becomes a complete control freak, and he wants it to take control of everything. And at some point he becomes so much in control that it seems like he becomes pretty much a dictator, towards the end, because things are getting crazy, and it's just, and the thing is, Scott, he doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't know until at some point what does goes on, and then he goes back. So yeah, I would say this is just a really entertaining, really good sequel, to pick up things where they left off, except it's 8 years since he had been Santa Claus, and now he needs to find a wife before Christmas Eve and needs to sort things out with his son. But it's just interesting to see how this toy Santa is just very off, very weird, but at the same time he has those funny moments. But then at the same time with Scott, being back in the real world, where he's trying to sort things out with his son, but he's trying to find a wife, and of course he does go on this one date that doesn't go well. And I do admit it is funny. The scene is funny, but at the same time it's also a little cringe, at the same time, because it's like, okay, what are you doing? Like, I mean, I get if some people are like that. I mean, that's okay. But I can't imagine being on a date where someone is like that, especially on a public date like that. I think if the date was more private, that's okay. But if it's out in public, it's like, no, let's just keep this simple here and just, you know what I mean? But yeah, so even though that day didn't go so well, but the thing is, it does turn out that he starts to spend time with his son's principal, Carol, and of course, so they go on a date, and it goes well actually, and they actually start to like each other, and so, then she later on becomes Mrs. Claus, and I just think this sequel is just, like I said, a good sequel to the Santa Claus, and it's just a good Christmas movie to watch. And I think with Tim Allen, as Santa Claus, of course, he plays such a really good Santa Claus, and even with the toy Santa, knowing how kind of off and controlling he was, he did very well with that as well. And I believe there was one line he mentioned, which I think is something you hear in Toy Story, I believe. I forgot what it was, but it's in there somewhere. So yeah, this is just a good sequel, good Christmas movie, and I really like how this shows how Santa needs to find a wife before Christmas, but he needs to start things out with his son. But he does do that, and even though it wasn't easy, but he still did that. Like, of course, I think he realizes, even though he loved his job as Santa, he realizes how important it is of his job as being a father. And so he does sort things out with his son. And of course, he does get a wife, towards the end. And he does, of course, and of course, that wife is Carol. And of course, he does, I think he gets married at least before Christmas Eve, just before Christmas Eve. And yeah, so when that happens, all of a sudden he's back to being Santa Claus again, and then she's now Mrs. Claus. But then, knowing that it is Christmas Eve, he's busy that night, so um he has to deliver toys all around the world. And yeah, it's just very interesting, and I like on the take of the sequel and how it was done. And I would say that they did a really good job. They really did, and I love the songs in the movie, and I love the atmosphere of it, of the North Pole, which has this very magical winter feel to it, and it has this, very Christmassy feel to it, which I love. I love when they have that special kind of feeling to it, especially in Christmas movies, where it makes it feel a little bit more wintry and Christmassy and very magical, because it just gives off this very warm, uh, like cheerful and jolly feeling to it, so I just love it. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. Um, and yeah, so I would say, like I said, this is a good Christmas movie, good sequel to the Santa Claus, of this continuation after the first, and it's just, I would say it's just as entertaining and funny and enjoyable to watch as much as the first. And yeah, I love the cast, the music, and just everything, and I love the funny moments in there, and even the heartwarming moments as well, definitely. And so to rate it, I would say to rate the Santa Claus 2, I would definitely give it a B. I would give it, I would say a 7.4 out of 10. 4 stars for it being entertaining. And what was the other one? I would definitely say 70%. So that's my review and rating on the Santa Clause 2. And comment down below on which one is your favorite, the first, second, or third. And of course I will review the third, but that will be next year. And I apologize for the lighting, but this will do for now. But I'm just gonna make sure to do my videos more during the day, and I also gonna make sure to have something in the back to have some kind of Christmas decorations, just to make this more feel like a Christmas type of video, so yeah. And of course, to see more content like this, movie content, subscribe, click on the notification bell so you'll be notified when I upload, and leave a comment down below which Santa Claus movie is your favorite, and or comment down below which Christmas movie is your favorite and what you thought of this review. So that's all for today, and I'll see you at the movies.